Oh, what time is it? It's Ghibli time! Hello lovely people of YouTube and welcome back to Mark on Life. As I said last week, today is the beginning of something slightly different. Thank you to everybody that watched the second series of Reeltrospectives. While I'm in the interim of writing series 3, I wanted to do a series on something just that I loved. And this is it. And it's called GhibliTime. For those that have no idea what Studio Ghibli even is, this is the series for you. So what am I going to do? Well, we are going to go through every single movie that Studio Ghibli has ever done, one by one, systematically, and I'm going to do a little review and give you some trivia and some details. Hopefully, even for those die-hard fans, there might be something that you haven't heard before. And to those that have never even heard about Studio Ghibli before, let this be your introduction to their world, their movies, and to everything associated with them. So, before we start the movies, which will be next week and onwards, today's episode I wanted to do Ghibli 101. So some background information, sort of just a bit of info on who they are, what they do, to get you started before we actually go into the movies themselves. Studio Ghibli is an animation or anime studio in Japan. It is the most revered, famous and successful animation studio in Japan, and one of the most successful and revered in the entire world. It is sort of seen as the Disney of Japan. It was founded on the 15th of June 1985, so it's been around for 32 years now, by 2 directors and 2 producers. The directors are Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata. They're the names that you'll see most when we do the series. They are the directors who have done almost everything. There are a few other directors, but they're the ones. Particularly Miyazaki is the most sort of famous name within Studio Ghibli. And the 2 producers were Yasuyoshi Tokuma and Toshio Suzuki, who were behind the scenes, hugely supportive and helped to found the studio again in 1985. The studio is located in Kogane, which is in Tokyo, and 8 out of 15 of the top grossing movies of animation in Japan are Studio Ghibli. This is sort of an overview of how successful they are. If you go to IMDb or anything like that and look at the most kind of favourite or successful, whether it be how much people love it or the grosses themselves, you will always see Studio Ghibli's films in there. So that's why I love them, that's who they are, and yeah. The ever-elusive name. The word is actually Ghibli. Originally, it's an Italian noun which comes from the Arabic word for the sirocco, which, and I quote, the term sirocco is an all-inclusive name given to hot and subsequently humid southeast to southwest winds originating as hot, dry desert air over North Africa, flowing northward into the southern Mediterranean basin. So it's hot wind, basically. So why the name, Ghibli? Well, they wanted to blow a new wind through the animation world, as it were. So it's quite a good name, it's quite evocative, has some quite good feeling in it. It also is after the Italian aircraft, the Caproni CA309 Ghibli, which is another reason. And that's kind of quite an evocative name anyway, the aircraft, and you'll see aircraft coming up a lot. In fact, you'll see travel coming up a lot, but we'll deal with that in a minute. So it's no surprise that the name of an aircraft would have something in common with the name of the studio. Now, how to pronounce it. Now, you've already probably noticed that I've said it 2 ways in this video already, Ghibli and Ghibli. People always choose one, and for me there is a correct one. As I said, the origin of the word, the Italian/Arabic, is Ghibli with a hard G. No doubt about it, that's absolutely true. However, the Japanese pronunciation is most definitely Ghibli. So for all of you saying Studio Ghibli, it's not right, and I'm going to prove it now. Let's have a look at the title card. Here you can see the title card that comes up on every single Studio Ghibli film. It's got a nice blue drawing of Tora, who we will mention later, and some words underneath it. There are 3 alphabets in Japanese: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. And this is katakana, which is used for names and loan words, okay? So you can see 7 there, right? The first 4, they make up the word studio, okay? They say, or the word in Japanese is studio, okay? So, su, ta, ji, o. Okay, su, ta, ji, o. Studio, okay? Which becomes studio in English, okay? And then the last 3, characters 5, 6, and 7, are Ghibli, okay? Ghibli, or ri, okay? Ghibli, okay? Ghibli, okay? This character that we're looking at, okay? If Studio Ghibli wanted it to be a hard G, they could, because Japanese does have a G, a hard G sound. There is a Gi. If they wanted it to be Ghibli, okay, they could. If they wanted it to be a hard G, and for it to be Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli in Japanese, they would. They would put this character up, okay? But they didn't. They chose this character, okay? Which is very, very clearly G. So for me, that is the end of the debate. Yes, I can understand how purists might say, well, the word comes from the Arabic and the Italian, and it's Ghibli, and I can't really argue with that. All I know is absolutely, unequivocally, 100%, the way that the word is pronounced in Japan and at the studio is Ghibli. So how do you pronounce it? Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli is known for making some of the most charming stories you'll ever see. But there are a lot of common themes and images that come up. A very common one is female leads, particularly young female leads. Usually young girls, teenage girls, you know, for example, in Spirited Away. You have Chihiro, young girl. You have Kiki in Kiki's Delivery Service. You have Marnie. You have endless. There's at least 5 or 6, maybe more, young female leads. Miyazaki, very, very sort of pushing forward strong young female role models in his films, which is great. You'll also see a lot of animals, also a lot of talking animals, particularly birds and cats. A lot of these sorts of classical mythological Japanese animals will be there, and they're often sort of mystical and magical, which is great. A lot of travel as well, as I said before, you know, of every kind: planes, trains, and automobiles. Particularly planes. Miyazaki was a huge fan of aeronautical engineering, and you can see this most clearly and obviously in one of the later films, The Wind Rises, which we will cover later on in the series. There's also usually a lot of misunderstood characters, particularly male characters. Lots of secrets and hidden places, which is always fun. And one thing I have noticed is there's very often not a clear villain in these films. There's someone you think is the villain, or you know, the anti-hero or the antagonist, but they're not a clear-cut villain all the way through. Occasionally, normally, you will see what you think is the villain, and then there's always a twist. There's always a way of seeing 2 sides, and that's what I love about these films. They're not just good versus evil. They're always trying to see a bit more depth, which is why they have so much more charm than a lot of mainstream feature films, and a lot of anime in general, which can be very good and bad, which is why it draws enormous Hollywood stars when they tend to do the English dubs, because they just have these incredible characters and stories which go across the whole series. Now, this is a bit of a debate as well. Officially, there are 20 Studio Ghibli feature films. 20. There are three others that usually get confused. So the first one is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is an honorary Studio Ghibli film, and I am going to cover it. That is the film we're going to do next week. I still like to count it as a Ghibli, but it really isn't. It was released the year before that the studio was officially founded, so it can't actually be counted as an official Studio Ghibli, but everybody sort of thinks of it as one, so I'm going to have it as an honorary one. The next one is a fully fledged Studio Ghibli, but it's a TV movie. That's Ocean Waves, so it doesn't really count as a feature film. It's treated as one because it's been released as one, but it's not. It was never meant. It wasn't theatrical in the same way. It was a TV movie, so it's sort of again another extra one. And the third one is the very recent one, The Red Turtle, which it is a Studio Ghibli, but not a full release. It is a collaboration with a French company called The Wild Bunch. So a bit unofficially 23, officially 20. There are also tons of other sort of unofficial releases. They did little TV series and short films and all this kind of stuff. But if you take 20/23 as the main canon, with 20 being the main canon of their feature films, that's probably the number we're looking for. My own collection is currently incomplete. I think I have 18 of the 23 currently. 15 on Blu-ray, 5 on DVD, and 4 Steelbook. I think there are 8 current Steelbooks. You can get all of them from Optimum Releasing, I think, and Studio Canal. They're all out on DVD and Blu-ray. If you have a Blu-ray player, I absolutely recommend it. I know you wouldn't think it would make much difference in a cartoon, an anime. It is so different. On the Blu-ray, the colours just come alive, particularly if you've got a great TV. They look absolutely spectacular on Blu-ray. Obviously, the Steelbook is not a particularly great investment unless you like Steelbooks. I'm a sucker for packaging, so I like them. But actually, some of the Blu-rays have special editions which have collector's cards, so it depends what you like. But if you have a Blu-ray player, definitely invest in them. They are fantastic. It's Totoro! How can you not know this? Totoro is the official mascot of Studio Ghibli. We first saw him in his own film, really, which was My Neighbor Totoro in 1988. It is by far one of the most popular of the entire canon of films, My Neighbor Totoro. It's one of the ones I would show people first, if we weren't going in chronological order, because it is one of the best. It's absolutely fantastic. And after that, they just sort of used him as their mascot. He is technically a forest spirit. There are lots of different sorts of variations of him. He can turn himself into big and small and all different sorts of things. He lives in the forest and he's just generally an awesome dude. In fact, he is so loved, as is Studio Ghibli in general, that they have been shown in other films. Eagle-eyed viewers out there will have noticed this face. Obviously, this is a cushion. He doesn't look quite like this. In Toy Story 3. If you haven't, go back and watch Toy Story 3 and you can see Totoro in the background. Normally he looks like a sort of big grey egg-shaped creature, just to show their reverence for the studio and the kind of mutual respect. So, I love him. You heard right! There is a Studio Ghibli museum. It is in Mitaka, which is about 20 minutes outside Tokyo, and it opened in October of 2001. It is utterly fantastic. It features all the characters, artwork. If you want to buy a ticket, it's a bit tricky. You can't just rock up and buy one, so I'll put a link in the description to the museum itself. I went about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's brilliant. They have a cat bus for the kids. You won't know what a cat bus is yet unless you've seen the films. You will later. When you get your ticket, you get a little animation cell in it, which is very, very cool. There's a cafe which you can get sort of food with the characters on it and everything. And most excitingly, when you're there, you can see a short Studio Ghibli film that nobody else can see. They have, I can't remember how many there are, I think it's about 4 or 5, short animations that have never seen the light of day outside their walls. Their security is very good for this. You cannot buy them. I've looked online, there is no torrents, there is no way to see them anywhere other than if you are in that building and you see one of them. So I have seen one of those sort of kind of secret films, which I'm not going to mention now. If I see you in person, I will tell you which one I saw and tell you about it. But it feels like quite a nice little kind of Ghibli privilege that you saw something that only the fans can see, which is great. There's one very weird thing about the museum though. Within all of this sort of magical mystery Ghibli stuff everywhere, in the toilets, and obviously I can't speak for the female toilets, only the male, in the toilets, amongst all of this stuff, was sepia drawings of British villages. It was an N village. I can't remember which one. It was like Norfolk or Northampton or something like that. I can't remember which one because it was a long time ago. But of like English churches and, you know, the village green in like sepia hand drawing. I was like, that's just the oddest thing to have in the toilet. You know, you're in this magical world like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Japanese animation. Go to the loo and all of a sudden it's like being in a pub in the middle of London. It's very odd, but very cool. So that's it for Ghibli 101. Hopefully some nice starter information for those who have never ever heard of the studio, and a nice little bit of trivia for those who like the films but just didn't know this stuff. Next week is the first film, and like I said, we're going to start with a technically non-official one, but we love it anyway. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. You can find me on all social media. For Instagram and Twitter, it is Mark Joseph Actor. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video and leave me a comment, it really does help. Share this out to anybody you know and subscribe to my channel to see more. I will see you next week on GhibliTime. So from me, Mark on Life, I will speak to you soon.